Thank you. You got a copy of the chair. All right, next up, Carlton Walker. For members in the audience, and Mr. Walker, so we don't have to go through it every time. Turn on the microphone, and we can't intervene in yes, and we can't intervene in an ongoing case. I know you and I have spoken before. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you being here. If you tell them about your full name and the county you're from.
Thank you, Chairman and Committee. My name is Carlton Walker. I'm from District 15. I'm a broker in charge of real estate contractor, SLED CWP certified instructor. I have a few suggestions on how the Judicial Merit Selection Commission could be modified to give the power back to the people. If you look for the South Carolina Residential Builders Commission, it's statute 405910. They have some requirements in there. One of the things that they do in this book for the Builders Commission, which they should do for the Judicial Merit Selection Commission, is they have a commissioner from each of the 7 congressional districts around the state. That would give equal representation. So that way, you go to and I would make that position, the way I would change the Judicial Merit Selection Commission, we got 10 members. 7 of those members should be elected from the public. That would be giving it power back to the people. So you would have 1 commissioner from each of the 7 congressional districts that are non-lawyers or paralegals, because it's a conflict of interest for a lawyer to be selecting judges. The last 3 seats, 1 would be selected from the House, 1 would be selected from the Senate, and 1 appointed by the governor. So you would have 3 lawyers on the commission to make sure everything was legal, but you would be giving these commissioners, it's kind of like the Commissioner of Public Works is an elected position around the state. Why don't we make this an elected position? We can't change our constitution. We still have to have 10 members, but we can change the way we select those members. Now, I personally filed a complaint against the Judicial Merit Selection Commission about a judge. This book and the ODC and the Judicial Merit Selection Commission is not worth the paper you write them on. I had a 47-page affidavit, 1,400 pages of exhibits. Chairman Popes read the transcripts. He voted against that judge. That judge got reappointed. We have a serious problem when judges don't follow laws, don't follow the Constitution, and as a 4th-generation veteran who served in Somalia in '93, I am not going to stand around and let this continue in our state. And on this book, it says South Carolina is the battleground for freedom. It's time that we give the power back to the people to let them hold judges accountable. And that's what I have to say.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate your time today. Any questions? Yes, Ms. Webb.
Thank you so much for being here. It's interesting. I deal a lot with the Builders Commission, and I appreciate that reference. I think that's the important position. Are the members on the Building Commission not builders? Is that a conflict?
They have non people that are not part of the industry and people that are builders and specialty contractors on that commission. But for the difference is in the Judicial Merit Selection Commission, like one person said, well, hey, if it is an elected position from one of the 7 congressional districts, what if that commissioner goes in front of a judge? Well, he'd be going in front of a judge for a case, not practicing law every single day in front of a judge that they're selecting.
No, and I understand that, and I guess my question is, if I make a complaint to the Building Commission, as I do through my practice, are the contractors that are on that commission conflicted out?
From hearing a case about a complaint, no, they're not.
About one of their contractors, so obviously if I'm complaining to the Residential Builder Commission, I'm complaining about a licensed contractor. Are the contractors responsible for policing that behavior conflicted out of that decision?
The members, I think the members on the 10, or the contractors that are on the Residential Builders Commission would not be unless that was one of their contractors or subs. I mean, that would be legitimate. But the difference between a lawyer being on the commission, that lawyer is going to be practicing in front of a judge who is over him during the trial. So you can't have
over him during the complaint.
Well, see, the way it works right now, I mean, if you file a complaint, and I went in front of the Judicial Merit Selection Commission with a literally 47-page affidavit, pointed out every I and every T how it's horrible, man. There was 6 misstatements of information in there that completely destroyed my life and my child's life. I have not seen my daughter since September 12th, 2022. And my case came into practice, was filed April of 2019, and the 365-day rule, the judge doesn't care.
I'm sorry for that experience. I appreciate the knowledge. Thank you so much.
So I think it'd be great to have where it's an elected position, because here's the problem. When you file a complaint right now, if that person, the commissioner, is selected by the governor or someone else, you know, a little lay person that doesn't have money to appeal something, you know, they're stuck with that decision. And if you had a commissioner that you could go to and file a complaint with that's in your congressional area, that person could hold that judge accountable and put those commissioners on 2 6-year terms. And when you first started, 4 of them would be on a 3-year term, and 3 would be on a 6-year term. And so every 3 years you have commissioners getting moved based on the the election cycle.
Mr. Walker, Mr. Ott has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Walker, thank you for being here, first and foremost. I think it's obvious to everyone that you care a lot about this issue. It means a lot to you. It means a lot to a lot of different people all across the state. So I appreciate you taking the time out. I just want to make sure that, this is being broadcast, so I just want to make sure that we don't confuse certain things. You said, I think I heard you correctly when you said that your recommendation was 10 members on the JMSC as required under the Constitution. And I don't think that's required under the Constitution. I just want to put that straight, and if we need someone to correct me on that, then let me know, Mr. Chairman. But it just speaks to having to have a merit selection committee. I don't think that it speaks to there having to be 10 members. So I think that I just want people hearing it to not think that we are confined in our work to having to have 10 members. I think we can come up with something different, ultimately, if we see fit.
I haven't read the actual Constitution on that section, so I was assuming that the 10 members. So I just came up with a way to select the 10 members that would be given the power back to the people.
Sure.
So like someone like me, when I complain, I'm like, look, I have an opportunity to sit down with that commissioner and say, look, here's how this judge did this. It's not following the rules I got it tagged and everything and pointed out exactly what happened, and that judge is back to practicing law or practicing as a judge.
And I'm with you.
And some people will say, some people will say, well, it's just one case. Well, it's one life. In the military, we've got what's called attaboys and foobarrs. You get a bunch of attaboys, you can do a bunch of great stuff, but you get one foobar, your career's over. Like when I was in Somalia, my captain ran our ship aground.
I'm with you. Yes,
and
sir.
That was the end of his career.
And I get it. You know what I mean? I understand the magnitude of it. I just want to make sure that we're all operating off of the same set, the understanding of what we can do and what we can't do. I think you bring up a very good point, though, even if it's not what you intended to do, which is right now with our current Judicial Merit Screening Committee of 10 members, right? I don't know why we should have an odd number, in my opinion. And I'll just put that out there for the committee's consideration, because with 10, I think that obviously leads to motions being made and then ultimately failing because they don't reach the threshold of a majority. So I think, I don't know if I agree necessarily on the congressional districts. I think that what you are showing by bringing us an example is that there are a lot of different ways to restructure this committee. I think at the end of the day, I'm hoping that we all get to the point where we agree that that's what we want to do, is restructure this committee so that it can work more efficiently and better. And I don't think it's just going to be the committee. Like, I think that at some point we're going to have to broaden our horizon and look at the entire process from start to finish if we're going to make fundamental change that is ultimately necessary. But since you had thrown it out there as if it was a constitutional requirement that we had to work within, I just wanted to make sure you knew it's not.
I appreciate that.
And just to help clear it up, so Article 5, Section 27 says that the General Assembly by law shall establish judicial merit selection commission to consider the qualifications. I think what Mr. Walker's referring to is actually the statute that then was brought out that delineated that, and that's where we can make the changes we need to change, because we can do it statutory.
I mean, we have the Commissioner of Public Works in Charleston, I'm friends with him, and like, that's an elected position. Why don't we have the Judicial Merit Selection Commissioners that are on that commission elected by the people from around the state?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Mr. Walker, thank you very much for coming, and thank you for speaking to the topic and also offering a recommendation to us. Many before you have not actually spoken to the topic, so I appreciate you doing that. And Mr. Chairman, I would concur with Representative Ott, and I believe I made that recommendation at our last meeting that we have an odd number of members. Didn't get reported on, but I made that recommendation, and I strongly agree with the good representative from Calhoun that we need an odd number. Thank you.
And staff is taking down those notes, and I keep telling you, I keep putting it in buckets, and the odd number part is part of one of those buckets for consideration. Mr. Thigpen is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Walker, for coming. Passionate and well said, spoken presentation. I want to get just a little bit of clarity. I agree with those who have spoken before me, and that thank you for sticking to the subject. Thank you for offering a solution, because a lot of times people come and complain about the problem.
You gotta show the solution.
Yeah, have given little consideration to how we move towards the solution. You mentioned, and I just wanted to restate quickly, 7 congressional districts, an appointment from each one. And, I don't know, and would have to look to the statute as far as, do we account for geographical diversity currently from different parts of the state? But you said no lawyers, you said paralegals or others. How would these individuals be selected? Would there be an election? Would there be an appointment from somebody? Who would be the appointing bodies? If you could elaborate on that, if you've given thought to it.
Yeah, my suggestion would be each commissioner, kind of like we have 7 U.S. congressional or congressmen, you would have an election every 6 years, and the people would decide who that commissioner is. Just like right now, Charleston County Public Works Commissioner, that's an elected position.
So those persons would have to campaign for those
Exactly,
positions?
but we'd also make it to where that person could not be a lawyer or a paralegal, because then that's where that conflict, then that's
They could
where...
not be paralegals? I thought you were advocating for them to
No,
be
no, not.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is, give me an example. The Dodd-Frank Act in 2008, I'm a real estate broker. I used to be a real estate, a mortgage broker. And back in the mortgage days, we used to tell appraisers, look, man, I want you to appraise that house for $450. I know it's only worth $350, and if you don't, then we're not going to use you anymore. And they'd be put on a blacklist if they didn't do it as we asked, and that's what caused the crash in 07, 08. And Dodd-Frank Act came out, and it's currently a law now, and it's enforced on real estate industry too, where we cannot contact an appraiser. Once we need an appraisal on a house, we have to submit the appraisal, and it's put into a wagon wheel that spins, and a random appraiser goes and appraises a house, and we cannot contact them, neither can the mortgage broker, until that appraisal comes back with a value. And then we can talk to them. But it's kind of like that thing, man. It's like, and the difference between a commissioner that's elected going in front of a judge versus a lawyer that's a commissioner, that lawyer would have power over the judges, where it's like, look, man, he wouldn't say this outright, but a wink, hey, yeah, you're coming up for reappointment in 3 months, and pretty much if my case doesn't go the way I want it, he won't say that, but that's implied, and this favoritism and nepotism needs to stop.
Well, and I want to thank you, and thank you for the analogy. I want to make sure I get clarity on what you said. So they would campaign, but you would prohibit lawyers or paralegals for campaigning or running for this elected office.
Correct, and here's where the other 3 slots, if it's going to be 10, or it could be 4, but have the House select a lawyer to be on that commission, the Senate select one, and have the governor appoint one. So you still have lawyers on there to make sure.
That was my next question. Were you saying that the three from the House, Senate, and governor would be lawyers?
Correct.
And I don't know for the lawyers that are on here, could we prohibit lawyers or paralegals from campaigning for an elected office?
You know, we normally have qualifications, not disqualifications, so that would be an interesting legal question, and I'm sure a lot of lawyers would make a lot
Well,
of money.
I'm not trying to beat up on lawyers, but it's like.
No, me neither. I just, to his point, I think it becomes a legal question, and I don't know the answer to it. That's why I asked.
I would say this: if it's a retired lawyer or retired paralegal, sure, they could run for the commission because they're not actively practicing under the judges that they would be selecting.
No, you understand what I'm saying, though. Like, I understand your sentiment and I understand your end goal. I'm talking about from a constitutionality and people's rights standpoint. Could we do that? That was what I was trying to,
I mean, I would be open to keeping lawyers on there if there was some kind of clause in there that, hey, look, if, this judge is within 2 years of coming up for reappointment and you're going to go in front of this judge, or that judge is coming in front of the Judicial Merit Selection Commission withdrawn, like, you can't practice in front of that judge. The judge would have to recuse themselves, because that whole issue where, like, if you go in front of a judge and then that judge comes up for reappointment 3 months later and that judge is thrown off for no reason, and that person recused themselves from being on the commission, but the judge was still removed, and then, someone else is appointed in their favor, like, that stuff like that's gotta stop.
That same issue is one thing we talked about when we talked about term limits for JMSC, staggering terms. In other words, you may come and run for a judge in front of me the first time, but you wouldn't have to worry about seeing me again
Right.
when you came up. So there's some other things, and ultimately, even the rotation of like subgroups within JMSC, that's something once they establish their rules can do to address the evil he's talking about. So there's some other things in there.
Yeah, I'm open, I'm not trying to bash lawyers, but there would have to be some kind of precaution put in place to, like, look, it's kind of like a real estate agent or mortgage broker saying, hey, you gotta give us $450 on that house, or we're telling everybody we know not to use you guys. It's kind of like the Dodd-Frank Act. You gotta stop that destroyed our economy in 2008.
Yes, yes, and a lot of lawyers went to jail on that one too, so. Mr. Whitten, I recognize you have a question too. Mr. Walker, I want to tell you, I'm gonna let Mr. Whitten ask his question, but I want to be respectful of that, probably another dozen folks behind you. So, Mr. Whitten, you recognize, sir.
Yes, sir. Just a quick question. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your service as well. From this side, when we start, as we try to figure this thing out, and who can be on these boards and who can't, and who can serve on the JMSC, and we keep hearing talk about not having lawyers, and the idea of retired lawyers being able to be there, and what I've come to find is there's a lot of retired lawyers that still have an interest in certain firms. They started the Johnson & Johnson law firm. They're retired from that, and then now there's folks working for that law firm under this person that still may own it, that may sit here. So does that create the same conflict of interest? Billy Smith works for the Johnson law firm. Is he qualified or not qualified because this judge sits on the JMSC? I don't know how you fix that if you've got that magic answer.
I'm all up for debating this because, that's how we figure out what the best solution is. But to that answer, I
just don't know where it stops.
Yeah.
How do we qualify and disqualify folks from sitting on this? Because of the optics of it, that's what we're trying to fix. A lot of it is the optics or the point of, well, does he get preferential treatment because he or she serves for this firm? So I don't know.
I don't know the answers to all that, but maybe there needs to be something in, like I said earlier, like if their lawyers are on there, if there's a case, it's got to be a different judge. I don't know how that would work, but
I was hoping you'd answer that.
Well, the only thing I could suggest, okay, so say, obviously lawyers are allowed to practice anywhere in the state. Say if you had a case in Charleston and that law firm that commissioner that's retired came out of that law firm in Charleston, but his law firm's, having a case in Greenville, then, I mean, maybe we'd have to look at it, but, you know, if you're practicing in Greenville and the judge in Charleston's coming up for reappointment, you know, there's no conflict there, I guess.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, appreciate you being here.
I
today.
appreciate you, thank you for your time.
No applause. Hey, that's you.
I know that was a friendly.
That's my son. I'm
Yeah,
kind of hard to
no
follow.
problem. I know that was a friendly clap, not a taunting clap, but we're not going to clap anymore. Okay. Mr. Walker, you're recognized, sir. Second,
Thank you.
Mr. Walker. Yes, sir.
Thank you. My name is James Walker. I live on James Island, which is overseas from Charleston there. And graduate, electrical engineering graduate of Civil in 1969, so I'm retired now. But I want to be a little more, less specific than all this. But last Saturday, there was a nice editorial in the Post and Courier about the Merit Selection Committee. And their main thing was actually on diversity, and you know, because there's a lot of old white guys in the Supreme Court and everything, and I'm an old white guy, so you know that doesn't bother me personally so much. But there needs to be more appearance of that in the committee. But the big thing is, yes, the way the judges are selected, you know, it's kind of secret. And you vote from secret. There's 170 votes to vote for them, so you can always hide behind that. Well, you know, it's a good old boy network, and I think we all realize that, and that's been a problem for a long time. So, so right now the solution, you know, is what my son was putting out. You know, you have a lot of now the governor could appoint that. I disagree with him necessarily a little bit about electing everybody, because that means campaign and you got to get money, and then you can be obliged to your campaign donors too. So there's questions about that too, as to whether the best way for the governor to appoint each commission from each congressional district, which would make sense. But at least the governor is kind of answerable too, because he has a cabinet and he has to answer for the people he appoints to his cabinet. And I say, yeah, I agree with the thing. Just, yeah, if you get lawyers involved, you know, with the same problem that you've talked about a lot before on my son's thing is, you know, because a practicing lawyer legislator can be, you know, he's appointing a judge, approving a judge, and yet he's going to be before that same judge, and that causes a lot of conflict. Now, a conflict of interest. Now, is to the ethics of judges. Now, there's been the federal government has stringent standards of conduct for and enforcement of legal files, and in the United States, South Carolina could adopt some of that. But right now, they have the South Carolina Code of Judicial Conduct, and the code contains 3 canons that have standards, and responsibility outlines the responsibility of the judiciary. But in the last 20 years, there have been 0 judges have been held accountable, and there's been over 1,000 complaints. So, yeah, I haven't gone before the regular court, but the family court is really needs a lot of reform. It's the family court is not about families, not about justice, and not about the truths, and that's a legal. You know, that's a whole separate issue from, I think, what we're talking about here, the choosing of judges. But it certainly needs to be looked at, because the family court judge in a court of law or at a traffic court, you can request a jury trial. You can't do that in a family court. In a family court, I know personally of 2 judges that have broken a lot of rules, and nothing's ever happened to them. And so that's my biggest issue right now, because that's my most experience with family court, because I haven't been to court, the circuit court or anything else except for traffic courts and stuff like that.
I can tell you, Mr. Walker, I used to be solicitor. Nobody ever comes when things are going good at the circuit court. So
No, that's true. That's true. Yes.
So that's your 3-minute sermon. I want to see.
Yes, but they are up. Yes, thank you.
If any members have any questions. Yes, Mr. Robbins recognized.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mr. Walker, thank you also for coming. And I just wanted to ask you one question based on a comment you made. Do you believe that the problem is a lawyer legislator voting for a judge, or do you believe the problem is the lawyer legislator serving on the JMSC? Or both?
Both, really. It's a conflict of interest, I can see, I think. Because
To be a legislator voting on all of these judges?
well,
no matter what your
not
practice
legislature
is?
voting on the judges, not necessarily that, but selecting them.
What about a legislator who doesn't practice litigation law, that practices real estate law, that's never in a courtroom? That legislator can't vote for a judge?
Well, I wouldn't have a problem with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so
That
it's
would be- yeah.
just people that are in court,
They go into court in front of the judges.
no matter whether they appear in just a limited number of jurisdictions?
Well, that's a sticky question. You would have to, you know, maybe if you had, okay, if a lawyer was gonna be voting on a judge and going before that judge, maybe he should request a different judge.
Which has been the practice in South Carolina for a long time.
Yeah.
This just didn't start happening 2 years ago.
Right, yeah.
And are you aware too that judge has, as does that lawyer, has an oath and a code of conduct that requires that judge to recuse him or herself if they believe they are in a conflict of interest situation?
Well, I was partially aware of that, yes, sir. I just saying, there's been 1,000 complaints in the last 20 years and no judge can, so maybe they're doing a good job, I don't know, at least in circuit court and everything.
I don't know if that statistic is accurate, but I would tell you that there were 1,000 complaints in 20 years. That's a pretty minuscule number.
Okay.
But I just want to try to understand.
50 a year,
with
man.
respect to the JMSC, so if a current member votes on a judge,
Mm-hmm.
and that judge has a 6-year term, if that current member rolls off of the JMSC before that judge comes back up for re-election, what do you think about that?
It wouldn't be a problem with that. If he comes up for re-election, since there's a different member of the selection committee,
Right.
yeah, that would be, you know, there wouldn't be any problem there.
Thank you. That's also a recommendation that I made at the last meeting. Thank you,
Okay.
sir.
All right, thank you. Thank you for listening.
Ms. Whip?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, thank you so much for being here.
Okay.
I think one of the things that you mentioned is something that we had talked about, maybe with one of the solicitors a couple months ago, but the idea, I like both you and your son's idea of sort of this regional approach, right? So, in other words, and I think Representative Ott is correct, if we increase the overall number of the panel, such that maybe it was, I don't know, 15 people, I'm making that number up, but something larger, so that smaller groups could rotate through and screen, right? So now I don't know who I'm being screened by, and they don't know who they're screening. So, and I guess I'm pushing back on the idea, just like the Builders Commission has builders on it because they know the subject, I do think there's some benefit to having lawyers who practice in this area and understand, you know, temperament and rulings and things.
Right.
And so what I'm trying to do is find a way to mitigate the problem you're talking about without completely throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Right, yeah, there should be
It's
some lawyers.
kind of,
Yeah.
right, so if we had something where, you know, smaller groups sort of met with the person, would that address some of the concerns you have in terms of the conflicts? If
I
they
think-
didn't know who they were screening and vice versa?
I think so. I think it would. Yeah, we were just taking the 10 members that
Yeah.
is already
Right.
in there and going with that.
Right,
so.
right, no, absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
but yeah,
Okay.
that would be, yeah.
Well,
I mean,
see,
this-
we're gonna come up with a solution
There's
here.
a lot of discussion, but I know there's a lot of people want to talk too. There is a lot of room for discussion on this. This is not an easy problem to fix to everybody's satisfaction, I know that.
Agreed, appreciate you, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time, sir. Appreciate it. Lisa Dowdy? No clapping, Lisa.
I knew you were going to say that. Thank you for showing me grace. This is my first time.
Thank you for being here.
But my heart went out to the gentleman as he spoke about his relationship with his daughter. Just give him a little applaud there. So thank you all for being here and allowing me to speak on this very, very important subject. My name is Lisa Dow.